Who you picking?
I called it. I told JQ I know what the first question will be and who's going to ask it.
There's one joke to make. We make it, and then we ask the real question.
I think it's the same answer every year. I have no idea. We'll see, though.
A lot of the talk for a while now has been how much stronger this year's draft is compared to last year. I'm sure a lot of that just has to do with the level of guys at the top. Once you get to the mid to late lottery area, do you feel like there's a big difference from what was available in that range last year?
I'm not. I want to say not necessarily, but I mean, we liked last year's draft too. It's such an eye of the beholder thing. Like, I think this is a very strong draft. I think it's maybe a little deeper, just in terms of guys who can come in and impact right away. But I just think drafts they're like this every year. Like, you convince yourself that there's either a ton of talent up top and not much elsewhere. This year, I feel like, we like where we're at, and we're kind of focusing on that more so than what a normal draft looked like or previous drafts look like. But I would say it's a range that we like a lot, and we felt pretty good about last year, and I think we got a really good one last year in Jacoby in a similar range. I mean, close to the lottery, but yeah, I would say it's a good draft is probably the best way to say it.
By saying you like where you're at, like, obviously you have all the relevant discussions, but does a move up or down seem, I mean, it's not like you have made a ton of those anyway, but does it seem even less likely at this point on Monday of draft week?
I mean, so much of the trade discussions, it always takes another team to make those moves. It doesn't seem like there's many options out there, at least to move up. Like, I think there's a lot of people that have the same feeling as we do that the top 10, the lottery, whatever, is a pretty good place to be. There's definitely interest in people trying to get our pick, I think, for the same reason. Like, it's an interesting group of players around there. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say it's any percentage chance that we do one or the other, but there's definitely conversations being had of teams trying to get into the top 10 for the same reason as why we like being here right now.
Masai identified the backup center position as an area of need after the season. Seems to be a lot of quality bigs in that range. I know you guys always talk about best player available when it comes to the draft, but would that kind of be a perfect storm if the guy at the top of your board at 9 ends up being somebody that checks off boxes in terms of need as well?
I wouldn't say it's impacting our decision making at all with 9. I mean, you guys know, like, one of the hardest positions to play, especially for young players, is a center position, and so there can't be a ton of expectation that whoever we would take at 9, if they are a center, that they can come in and fill those minutes right away anyways. So to draft that position with the idea that they would for sure be a backup center playing X number of minutes next year is kind of hard to say anyways. I think because of that, we're going to take the best available regardless of position, just because that's the way we operate. But also, actual rotation minutes is probably easier to fill, in free agency or trade or the different scenarios than to actually bank on a draft pick coming in and doing that. If they can do that, like you said, like that's a perfect scenario. But to make that decision in, late June and then hope by October that you're actually getting that production, it's just too hard to plan with that in mind.
The role of the center in the NBA has changed so much nowadays. What are the particular traits that you would look for if you guys were to try to evaluate the center position in particular in the draft?
I think probably the most important thing for us is our style of play. The way we like to play it, I think you all see it with Jakob in terms of like playing through him, letting him be a bit of an operator in the high post, and what he brings to our defense as well. I mean, you could kind of play it two ways. Like, it's always good to have another center alongside him who maybe does the opposite. It's also good to, with the way we play, you can see how he's effective. It'd be good to have 48 minutes of that same type of guy because of what it does for us. So we're definitely looking at kind of both sides of the coin in terms of what's the best type of player to pair with him. And again, that's as in terms of a free agency discussion too. It's kind of, I think the way we've always approached every position is we like guys that can play both sides of the ball. And if they're not going to play on the defense, I think Darko's made it pretty clear that you're going to have a hard time playing. That wouldn't change at all, whether it's a draft pick or a free agent, because I think anyone coming in understands you're going to be held to a certain standard on the defensive side of the ball to then be given more rope offensively. I think that would be a big part of any type of guy we're looking at, whether it's a center or any position.
Are you guys pretty confident that you know who's going to go 1 through 8 in whatever order that it is? Like most years, you have a group, people are going to go, they're going to be gone. What do you think?
I don't know if I'd say confident. I think we definitely have a bit of a feeling of who could go ahead. I think there's always a chance of one, maybe two guys kind of sneaking in there that change things up a little bit. It does seem like, at least if I'm reading all the stuff online and the public stuff and the sources, if you will, that it seems like there's 8 players that are being named to go ahead of us. If it goes that way, like, I'd actually be really surprised. It doesn't seem like any draft ever goes the way that it says it does to begin. So we're kind of preparing for, different scenarios of if all 8 go that are supposed to, what are we looking at? And then if one player slides in, that might shift things again. Like who are we looking at that might drop to us as well?
Just one more to go into the second round with the 39th pick. Have you found that the NIL landscape has affected that group of players at 39 with European guys coming or not coming, or how has that played into that sort of scouting?
Yeah, I think it's obvious that it has impacted it a lot. I think this early second round, discussion where in the past that was a pretty good contract for a kid in college to like stay in the draft for. Now with NIL, it's pretty much comparable to what they could get and stay in college. So how many of those guys, it's probably more of the younger players that would usually stay in to the draft, and that's who we would probably be picking from at 39. A lot of those guys are going back to college for another year before making the jump. And so we're looking at maybe a little bit older group of players than what we normally do. And that's not a bad thing. Like a lot of those guys can come in and contribute from day one just because they're more closer to being NBA ready.
Well, you said it's only 4-year guys. That seems to fit into your philosophy anyway.
Yeah, we've never really, NIL, pre-NIL, whatever, we've never really, especially in the second round, approached it so much based on like one group of player that we prefer to take versus not, whether it's a development or a experienced guy. But I would say we try to just get the guys that we think still have some upside, and some of those 4-year guys that we've taken, we see some potential with in a different environment with a little more development work. Is there more we can get out of them as a pro? And I don't think that would change any now. It just comes down to, maybe now there's less of those young development project guys that'll be available at 39 because a lot of those guys are now going back for a second or third year in college first before taking the jump.
I was going to ask about NIL as well. Like, do you see it impacting it more this year than last year? Is it going to just keep going more, like impacting drafts?
I definitely think it's more than last year because I think it was probably still a little new last year in terms of what colleges knew how much they could sway guys to stay. I do think at some point it's going to, I would imagine, plateau and players will just, they'll understand, I think it's going to take a number of guys who maybe go back to school and they don't improve and it actually hurts their draft stock or something, to where will it balance out and a certain number of these guys will actually jump when they have the opportunity earlier or if it goes the other way. I don't know. Like it's kind of, I think, early enough in the kind of infancy of what it's going to do to maybe it's another or 1 or 2 draft cycles to like really kind of balance out. But I do think it seems to be a larger impact this year than it was last year, but who knows how long that'll keep going.
How does the draft process change when you're working with a contending team versus, when you're working with a rebuilding team, whether that's talking to prospects about what their future outlook might be, whether, the internal conversations, just can you compare and contrast sort of those two cycles?
Honestly, not a lot. I think not a lot different. I would say it, when you're in a contending team situation, the guys you're taking, you're going to have the ability to kind of develop them in the background while your main group is trying to, get as deep in the playoffs as possible. So there's a little more runway with those guys to not be like thrown into the mix right away. But that doesn't change the fact that we're still looking to draft the same players. It's just that maybe with a non-contending team, there's going to be minutes available for this guy early on to where you can kind of get a read on them earlier to see, do they have what it takes to be an NBA guy and stick? But I wouldn't say the actual process of the drafting is any different, or at least the way that we approach it. Maybe it's, I would say if, as a contending team, maybe you value the pick more as an asset that you can use to go get a player in a trade that can plug into your rotation better if you're pushing to make more, playoff impact. But again, if you're just strictly on the draft, if you're taking the pick versus keeping or trading it, I would say you're probably still going to take the same players. It just comes down to how much do you get out of that player in the first couple of years.
Is there something you learned or that was illustrated, emphasized in these playoffs and maybe specifically the finals, that you're bringing into this draft that, what did you learn from the playoffs and the finals?
I wouldn't say anything in particular. I think it highlights how physical the game is come playoff. It's clearly a difference of just the intensity ratchets up. Defense is so much more important, which is why I think Darko and our coaching staff, they preach that so much, knowing that, someday we're hoping to be in that situation. And so you have to be ready for when the physicality goes up a level, can you take it? Or are you stuck in the, complaining with refs and stuff because they're not getting the foul calls you normally do in, November and December. And so it seems like the teams that can just fight through that, stay mentally strong, and actually take those hits and keep executing despite the more physical defense you're seeing on a possession basis. Those are the guys that they're being successful in the playoffs. And so I think that, the way we approach it is we want to get players that can eventually be playoff basketball players. And so, if they're not physically ready to take that sort of hit right away, at least we want to get guys that have the mental fortitude to be able to, once they get stronger and are ready to take the actual pounding that the playoffs is, they can fight through it, and eventually they'll be ready to impact it. But yeah, I'd say, that's kind of we've been there. I think this franchise has been in the playoffs enough with the group of people around here, and our coaches have been around the playoffs enough elsewhere as opposed to the last couple of years, that I think everyone knows how intense it is and how draining it can be of a process to fight through and try to win 4 games against the same team. It takes a certain type of player to understand that, and that those are the types of guys we're looking for.
Is there a specific urgency this year to improve the team, either through the draft or through free agency, because the fact that the East seems to be more open this upcoming season?
I wouldn't say an urgency as much as I think this was a big part of why we did the Brandon Ingram trade was, that we see him as a big addition to our team next year, regardless of what he brought this past year. So I wouldn't say the East is any more open. I think it's still going to be very difficult because I'm sure there's a lot of these teams that are kind of in the midfield that they're going to be trying to make that jump up to contention too. So, I think, we definitely feel like we're just trying to get the pieces in place that when we're healthy, when we're, ready to actually make a run as a group and on the same page, and chemistry is where we think it can get to, that we're ready to be in a point of actually competing some of those teams that have been ahead of us. It's just being, ready for when that opportunity comes. And so we're just trying to get our group together and going. And I think BI is going to be a big part of that group. And then from there, what we can kind of put in around the edges to keep pushing that forward is important. But at the same time, like, we're not looking to sacrifice any of our long-term with the, we still have a really young group of players. So we want to keep developing while maybe getting more competitive in the process.
Last couple questions. We've all seen and read about Bailey and whether it worked out here or there, if you want to. Did you get everybody in you wanted in, and was it different than any other year?
I mean, no, I would never say that we got everybody in we wanted to. I think it's always the song and dance you do with agents of, they're going to tell you the guy's for sure going ahead of us. And so, they only work out for a certain number of teams. And then there's another whole group of players who say that we would never consider their guy at 9 or wherever. And so they don't send him to us because they have to prioritize teams in the range that they think their guys are going to go. So there's always this like kind of back and forth of where your pick lands and can you get everybody in? And it's impossible to get everybody in, but you do your best with the scheduling. And there's definitely some guys that, we would have really liked to get in up here that they just, for whatever reason, prioritized other teams or scheduling for whatever reason of just being able to fit in the certain number of teams in the certain number of days. And it is what it is, but that's where we scout these guys so much during the season that what a workout does, doesn't really sway you that much. It is nice to get them here and to get to know them a little bit, and honestly to get some of your non-scouting staff around them. But from a getting to know guys standpoint, it's just a workout, honestly.
So it wouldn't preclude you from drafting a guy that didn't
No.
work out?
No, I think we said it last year, we did not work out Jacoby last year. We didn't get him as an interview at the combine last year. And so we somewhat blindly took him, but we did enough background on him. We had a good enough relationship with his representation that we felt very comfortable with taking him when our pick came up. And we got lucky that he fell the way he did, but yeah, it is what it is, we didn't hold it against them for not sending here because they didn't expect to be around at 19. And I think it's the same with 9 this year. Is there's a lot of guys that don't think they'll be on the board at 9. And if they happen to be that, we're gonna consider them just like we would have had they been here.
Yeah, and say there's that expectation of who this first 7, 8 will be. How do you feel about that next crop? Is there very little to separate the next 6, 7, 8 guys, or do you maybe just see 2, 3 key guys that you have?
Oh no, it's a big group of guys that are kind of that next tier of players consideration. And honestly, our 8 is probably different than every other team's 8, above us. And so where the lines are made of who goes ahead of us to the next 6 guys after us, 7 guys after us, whatever, it's kind of blurry. And ours is going to be different than everybody else's. It's definitely going to be different than what you're reading online. But no, we really like the tier of players that we're in right now, and we're trying to figure out the order of it. That's what these meetings over the next few days are going to do, to kind of get to a place where we're comfortable with it is. But the biggest thing with that is it opens things up. If we're really comfortable with this group of players and guys that we're comfortable, through these meetings, if they end up still being on the board later in the draft, when the draft actually comes, that's where conversations of trying to jump back in and get a guy because we have them ranked so high during this process it comes out, So these are what all these kind of leading up to the draft, these meetings do, is it sorts out not only what we'll do at 9, but also how it shapes the rest of the draft.
Dan, have you guys been able to incorporate AI into the drafting process?
I'm sure in some way. I'd like to hope that none of our scouts are using it to write reports, but no, I don't know. It's it's a part of everything these days, it's definitely not, we're not having models run on it. And so much of this is we're tackling this the same way we always have. With you have to see these guys in person. You have to like really feel like a gut instinct on what you feel about these players, regardless of what any sort of machine learning can tell us. But then we also take in analytics and we take in, these different perspectives on it. But I wouldn't say that it's like shaping or changing the way that we're doing this process at all.
Obviously, last year you took Ulrich as a long-term project, and I know he got hurt, but a year later, are you excited about him? Were you pleased with the steps he took? Is he meeting kind of what you saw last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely kind of went as expected for the year, where it was, maybe a couple months of like growing pains, figuring things out, just the speed of the game, the physicality, all that stuff. But it seemed like by the last couple months of his season pre-injury, like he was really trending in the right direction. And it was super unfortunate that he got hurt when he did, because with the way the main team was going, like we were really hoping to see him mixed in there and getting minutes with the big club. Just to, again, like as a measuring stick to see what the summer should look like and then this next year. But I think from a like the progress that he's shown in 1 year, it was, pretty promising in terms of like, this is what we were hoping to see and expecting. I think physically he's really improved. He's getting stronger, and it's just a matter of time for the game to slow down for him and to really like start to pick things up. And I mean, as you guys all know, like the NBA there's so much that goes into it in terms of just like the understanding of the game and defensive reads and offensive sets and like the amount of things that are being thrown at him. For where he came from, it's going to take time for that to really digest. And I think all the work he's put in on his game, in the weight room, these sorts of things, like he's doing the work to prepare for when all those things kind of click. And I think defensively he showed, at least in the G League, some potential in terms of just naturally being a gifted, like impact player on that end of the floor. So what we can unlock, the rest of it is just a matter of time. And, we'll see him at Summer League. He should be back ready to go for that. And then we'll see where the summer goes and what it brings for next year. But I'd say the development plan, it hasn't changed any in terms of the timeline that he's on. And it's, I think if everyone just has a nice, slow approach to like just watching what this kid can turn into, the result might be pretty fun at the end.
It's Damon Stoudemire, and thanks for watching the Toronto Raptors YouTube channel. Check out our latest videos and subscribe for more.
Stoudemire launches a three, knocks it in! Stoudemire. Yes! What? Damon Stoudemire!